is Thursday night. I'm still getting used to this new time and being on early, so we're just going to deal with it, right? So tonight after my show, we've got the launch of Endeavor coming up on Focus, so you guys be sure to stay tuned afterwards. We probably have maybe another week or two, depending on how far we get through stuff tonight, on going over the investigation. Tonight we're going to look a lot at the investigation itself. We're going to look at photography, and we're going to look at EVPs. So depending on how far we get through that, I kind of wanted to spend some time next week looking at debunking photos, and then I want to spend some time on reviewing evidence, and then at that point, we can kind of wrap up with what you would do with your client and how you would wrap up with them. So we're going to have some informative shows. I'm sorry it's kind of boring at the beginning, but you guys, if you don't understand the method behind the madness, you're not going to understand some of the stuff that you guys are going to see us do when we're filming live and you're watching us actually on site on an investigation. So this weekend we're going to be doing some filming. You guys are going to have so much fun with that. We are actually investigating a movie theater that was built in the 1800s. So the client's given us permission to film for that. So we'll have some of that on a show coming up. And then I've got a couple of new client cases coming up and some other stuff we're going to be working on, so you guys will get to see some of that as well. So let's go ahead and let's get into tonight's show. And don't mind the glasses. I've been wearing my readers all day today. My eyes are killing me, so I put on my other glasses tonight just so I can kind of review everything. So sorry guys, got the 4 eyes going tonight. So last week what we covered, tonight again we're going to go over more of the investigation process. Last week we covered the game plan, meeting with your client in person, who goes on the client interview. We talked about forms in the client questionnaire. We talked about the mini investigation after the client interview, and we talked about some reminders for investigators. All of that information, like I said, it's going to be on the education tab of the NPS website. Right now it's on the DNS Paranormal Crew page underneath Ghost Hunting 101, so if you guys want to see that, you can see it. Other than that, we're going to kind of pick up with the actual investigation tonight. This is going to apply to clients and other investigations. If you're going to a commercial location, if you're going to a group event, something like that, it's going to apply there as well. We're going to focus on a few main points of the investigation. Like I said, EVPs and pictures. You guys know that I'm the photography department chair for NPS, so I'm kind of enjoying some of these pictures lately, and some of them, guys, we really need to focus on debunking, so that's why I want to spend some time on that. Let's start off with some basics, with setting up equipment, DVR systems, video cameras. Not everybody's made that investment, and that's okay. Some people like to use just a regular handheld camera, and some people like to go in without one. So let's go ahead and let's start talking about patience, which is one of my favorite virtues that I'm still working on. You guys that know me well. I'm always talking about how the good Lord's always working on my patience, and it takes a lot of patience when you're investigating. Investigations will probably take more time and patience and hard work than you think. And if you think the TV shows are awesome, and if you think they are always catching activity, I want to clue you in on something. Most of those shows, they spend a week on site investigating. And what you're seeing are snippets of what they may or may not have caught. Some of that stuff's for entertainment purposes, so you guys need to remember that. It's great when it comes to showing the flashy new equipment and working on some techniques, but I'm telling you right now, TV shows are entertainment. They're great, we love them, but it's if you've ever been on a real investigation, you know it's nothing like that. Now, when you start off investigating, you may not see or hear anything at first, but that doesn't mean when you go back through your pictures and listen to your audio recordings and your EVPs that you're not going to find something. Just because you didn't hear it while you were on site doesn't mean you're not going to find it when you review. Ghost hunting's nothing like what you see on the shows. You don't get the continuous activity, so you have to be what? Patient, okay? If your intent on participating in a paranormal investigation is to have a ghost chase, or to get scared, or to get startled, you might want to consider staying home and watching a movie, or maybe watching one of your favorite ghost hunting TV shows, okay? Most individuals on an investigation are dedicated to the research and the investigation that goes on to the investigation itself. Guys, we're committed to our clients, and we're committed to furthering this field. So when you go out with us, we may have all fun and games until we get to the location, and after that, you're going to see us put our serious caps on. If you're easily scared or startled, or you're running and you're screaming and freaking out, you're going to be a major distraction to the team that's working. So be thinking about that. If you want to go on a ghost hunt and you've never been on one, I would suggest going to a public event or a charity event that's held in your area. I would not advise going out with a team, because what's going to happen is you don't know what's expected, you don't know what's going to happen, and you're probably going to ruin that team's night, because they're going to have to be keeping you under control when they're trying to focus on their client. So if you have an opportunity to go out and investigate with a larger group, or like I said, a charity event, I would go and do that first, unless it's a team that's willing to take you out to the cemetery and be patient with you, okay? Keyword is patience with ghost hunting. Always focus on the investigation and try to debunk first before jumping to a conclusion. I cannot tell you guys how many times we see that on the NPS page. People are jumping to conclusions, automatically assuming something's paranormal, and not even giving it a second thought to try to pull away what it actually could be. We don't take our cars to the mechanic and hand over $500 and tell them go ahead and fix it. When they turn around, they tell us, oh, it's just a fuel pump. No, mechanics look at your car. They take it apart, they look at it, they look at the symptoms, and they figure out what's wrong with your car. It is the same exact thing when you're looking at your evidence, whether it's photographs, video, or EVPs, okay? You have to remove what can be proven first, what is normal, to get to what's paranormal. Now, if you're on an investigation and something happens, your teammates are with you, take a deep breath. Don't scream, don't yell, don't freak out. Just take a deep breath and start trying to debunk what's going on, okay? It could have been the wind, it could have been another teammate, it could have been the house settling, it could have been all sorts of stuff. Did you feel it tugging at your shirt? It could have been, somebody walked past you if you're sitting down and grabbed your shirt on the floor, okay? It could have been something else. So don't freak out when something happens, and I know a lot of us do that. So remember, be patient, think through it, think for an alternative explanation for what's going on. Okay, so let's flip to the next slide. When you've ruled out all outside influence, then begin your techniques to communicate and see if you get a response. At that point, we've debunked everything. It wasn't an animal, it wasn't a pet, it wasn't my teammate, it wasn't the wind. We've ruled all that out, so now we think we've got some activity. So let's get our cameras ready to take pictures. Don't count on getting anything. Get your camcorders going, your DVR systems going, whatever you've got, that should be going. Have it ready to go, and have your digital recorder going. Guys, we've talked about having two. We've talked about having one turned on when you get on the location, and we've talked about having one for EVP burst sessions, okay? Be prepared. Start asking your questions. If something got thrown or pushed over, start asking questions directed at that. Give them time to respond. We'll talk about that when we talk about EVPs. Give them time to respond. Ask them to knock. You'll see me a lot of times go on investigations, and I'll say, can you knock like me? And I'll knock a couple of times, and I'll wait, and I'll listen. You can do it on the wall, a cabinet, a piece of furniture, anything to try to get them to mimic that knock. When you're speaking with them, you want to speak in a normal voice. Don't yell. They're not hard of hearing, folks. Don't yell. Just have a normal conversation with them, okay? But make sure that you give them ample time to respond. Now, you want to be aware of your surroundings. So if you're in someone's home, you've already done your walkthrough. Remember, we did that with the client investigation. So you should have already laid out what the location looks like for your other teammates. Some people like to draw simple little floor plans and mark out where things are. Some people like to, when they get on site for the investigation and they haven't been on that location before, they like to kind of walk through. Remember, we talk about doing walkthrough pictures. That's when you start being aware of your surroundings. Look for all sorts of things that could either make a noise, trip you up, or cause some type of activity or sound or something that later on you might think, hey, I remember seeing that there was a fan in that one room and I bet you we forgot to turn it off, something along those lines. Make sure you know where the nearest exits are, you know where the doors are. Make sure that you have checked all of the windows and the doorways for drafts, and just kind of take a look at what they normally do there. If you're at a business location, what do they normally do there? Okay, take that into consideration. And remember, you guys are having a team plan because it's a team. Where are your teammates going to be when you're in the location that you're going to be at, the room that you're assigned to? So kind of be aware of your surroundings there. And never, ever, ever go off by yourself, okay? So So make sure you've always got somebody with you. Now, the next thing, you see a lot of this on TV, and it's not recommended. Provoking spirits is a no-no. We don't ever want to provoke spirits. You guys, you don't know what you're dealing with when you get on site, and it could be something more than what you could handle. So never, ever, ever provoke a spirit. You can do something that might trigger a reaction, like the knocking or the asking of questions, but I wouldn't provoke. You can, if you're in a church, you're investigating at a church, or you're investigating even sometimes at like funeral parlors and funeral homes. If you want to get up and act like you're reading from the Bible, you may get something from that. If you're in a hospital, pretend to be a patient. We did that at the hospital in Arkansas, and we actually had Michelle lay down on one of the rolling beds, and we got some activity with treating her like a patient. So think about that. Ask for bandages. Ask for where the doctor is. Ask for a drink. Do that type of thing. If there's a piano there, maybe play a little bit of music on the piano. Anything that you can do that will trigger a reaction without provoking the spirit, okay? And then lastly on this section, if you have a medium or a sensitive with you, don't expect them to lead you straight to the activity. I don't know how many of you guys know about mediums and psychics and sensitives and empaths and how they work, but they all work on different frequencies. And so you could have one that's with you that's not on the same frequency as the activity in the home. And you may have one that is. So don't expect them to lead you straight to stuff. They're going to pick up on what they pick up on, but they're not your key investigator on the investigation, okay? So don't expect them to lead you straight where you need to be. I can't put any more stress on that. And don't stress out your medium or your psychic or your sensitive or your empath, okay? Let them walk through, let them do their thing, and then let them kind of feed back to you. But don't expect them to say, oh, bing, 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 the spirit's in this room. It's not going to happen, okay? Now, one thing that we have started talking about recently that we really didn't see being talked about in the community as much, and it's getting to be a bigger and bigger thing, is safety. The health and safety of your team should be priority number one. Now, Ted did a big write-up with Ghost Hunting 101, and these next two slides and this information comes from that Ghost Hunting 101. That information is on the NPS website. And I'm sorry, it wasn't Ted, it was Will. Will actually did this for us. So take a look at this on the NPS website. It is underneath the resources tab. So let's take a look at some of the safety concerns. We talked about doing your walkthrough and being aware of your surroundings. So let's look at electrical concerns. Are there any exposed wires? Are there extension cords out in the open that you might trip over in the dark? Are there any nails, screws, missing floorboards, or handrails? Do you need to worry about animals or pets in the house? That could be birds, it could be fish, because sometimes aquariums have those little bubblers that can make noise. Mold, mildew, odors, poisonous gases, sewer concerns. You guys should always have a mask in your kit. Stairways, remodeling hazards, asbestos risks. There's all sorts of things that you can think of along these lines that are safety issues that you need to be aware of. You wouldn't necessarily think about it going into someone's home for an investigation, but all of these can pose a potential hazard, so just be aware of them. Deserted and abandoned properties, they're deserted and abandoned for a reason, and if that's the case, there could be some structural integrity issues with it. There could be some electricity issues. There could be asbestos there. So be aware when you're going to deserted and abandoned properties, okay? Same thing with basements and attics. A lot of those places have a lot of dust, so make sure you're wearing a dust mask. There could be, if you're in a basement, a potential for mold. There could also be, rat droppings, bat droppings, any type of insects, that type of thing. So just be aware, okay? Just be safe, take a look at everything, take note of it. A lot of times when you're going out to do your mini investigation, you're going to see some of this stuff. It's going to really come to light when you start doing your investigation, because if you're running a DVR system, you're going to be running cords and you're going to see a lot of this, okay? So just be aware of that. Now, investigation setup, and we're going to kind of move a little fast here because I want to spend a little more time towards photographs and EVPs. Setting up for your investigation, you're going to have your cameras. You're going to want to set up your cameras in the rooms where your clients reported activity. It doesn't do you any good setting it up in the hallway if they haven't reported activity there, especially when most systems come with 4 or 8 cameras, okay? So listen to your client. Where's the activity been? That's where you want your cameras. You're going to record using your DVR system, or you're going to record. Some people like to get the handheld full spectrum or night vision cameras, and they like to put them on tripods and put them in the room. There's no wires associated with that. The only downside of that is you don't have a command center to sit and watch a monitor during the night to watch activity and see where your teammates are in case something happens, okay? But you do still get to record what happens in that room for you to be able to review later, okay? Set up your voice recorders. You know, we've talked about carrying two, one on your person, one for EVP burst sessions. Why not set up a recorder in the room where there's activity, okay? So we've got a camera in there, and now we've got a voice recorder. Some camera systems for DVRs have audio and some don't, so that might be a good matchup when you're going back and you see something on the camera that in the room has moved, and you can match it up with the sound on the recorder, okay? Did you bring any trigger objects? Set those out. We go to a place in Gainesville called Hill House Manor, and we will always take toys because there's a little girl spirit there, and we will always set a ball out. It's one of our trigger objects. It stays in our trigger object bag, okay? Set those things out. Get the cameras on them. Mark them, do whatever you need to make sure that when you go back to sit at command center, you know, okay, I can watch that ball. I've, put a pencil in front of it to, see if it moves towards her or whatnot, okay? You're going to conduct your EVP session. You might use your dowsing rods or a pendulum. I like the pendulum. It works for me. The dowsing rods don't. You might use those to have a spirit connection, or you might use your ghost box or your Ovilus or your echo box, okay? Those are things that you can use. Even if you don't have a camera system, you can still use those pieces to communicate. Then you want to coordinate who from the team is going to be monitoring what areas. Who's going to be in what room of activity? Who's going to be at command center? Okay. What we usually try to do when we were with larger teams is we would break up into 3 or 4 mini teams, and we would take turns, every hour and a half we might switch out and everybody have a turn at command center and in different rooms. Different people get different responses, okay? What's your time schedule going to be for the night, and when are you going to take breaks? This should all be, a lot of teams will set it up way in advance. That's how they do their schedules for every investigation. Some teams will say, hey, when we get on spot, let's take a look at things. We might take a break in an hour, let somebody go outside and smoke, have a bathroom break, and then switch up and do it again, okay? So your setup is your cameras, your voice recorders, your trigger objects, EVP communication sessions, who's going to be in command center, and your time schedule, okay? That's part of your investigation. Now, let's get into some fun stuff here. Let's get into 2 of the meaty things that we like to do on investigations. There's a quote from Thomas Edison that says, "I'm inclined to believe that our personality hereafter will be able to affect matter. If we can evolve an instrument so delicate as to be affected by our personality as it survives in the next life, such an instrument ought to record something." Okay? Referring to what? EVPs. Now, a lot of you probably know what EVP is, and this probably sounds like I'm, talking down to people, but you know what? We do have newbies, and we do have people that are just interested in the paranormal, so we're going to start with the basics. An EVP is the recording of a voice or voice-like sound that is not audible to the human ear, okay? You can't hear it. The frequencies of these sounds are reportedly well below the range of sounds that can be perceived by the human ear. Typically, but not always, they are short, having a length of only 1 word or a short phrase. That's because spirits have to get up enough energy to be able to communicate. So when you're asking questions, you need to remember that. Now, let's talk about doing our EVP sessions. You know what an EVP is? Let's talk about our sessions. When you start your EVP session, now, again, I talked about having 2 recorders. So I've got one on me that's going the entire time, and it's capturing everything. My second recorder, when I go in and I'm doing my burst session, I'm going to turn it on, and I'm going to mark it. And I'm going to mark it by stating the date, the time, the location I'm at, and who's with me. Now, the way I do it is whoever's in the room with me has to say their name so I can match that sound later, okay? So you want to make sure you start with the date and the time, the location, and who's in the room with you. You tag your teammates with their voice. That way when you go review later, you can say, oh, you know what, that kind of sounded like Deacon. Well, I can go back and listen to Deacon's voice and know whether or not it was him, okay? It's part of your debunking methods. Then you want to find a good location, sit down the recorder. It could be on a table, a counter, a windowsill, a couch, a bed, whatever. Step away from it, and then in a normal tone of voice, you're going to speak clearly and respectfully and start asking your questions. Now, Some people like to go in knowing about their locations, and some people don't. Okay, so that's where it's going to kind of come into play here. You can also alternate between male and female individuals asking. Sometimes you'll get a better response to one or the other. If you did your research ahead of time, then you can ask specific questions. If you didn't, then they can be more general, but you want to keep them short, okay? These type of questions that you want to ask, you want them to be, you want your question to evoke a short answer or a couple of word phrase. So, are you male or female? What's your name? Are you married? Do you have children? Can you make a noise for me? Can I take your picture? I ask that a lot and people think I'm crazy, but I do it because you know what? It's respectful. Do you want me to leave? Do you know that you're dead? What year is it? Do you like it here? Do you want to leave this place? Do you want me to pray for you? How did you die? Would you like for me to pass a message along to someone? You notice how all those questions would evoke a short answer, okay? And those are just samples. I mean, if you're on location and you know there's a John there, you might say, hey, John, are you here? Or, hey, John, was that you that I heard? Okay, you're going to make it more specific. Now, let's move along on EVP sessions. This, again, is another piece taken off of the NPS website on the resource tab. This, again, was another piece from Will. So, the rule of 5. The rule of 5 means the maximum words in your question shouldn't exceed 5 words when possible. Again, we're trying to get a short response. Think of it this way. If the best EVP disembodied voice you have ever caught is 2 to 3 words, what are the chances they're going to hear more than 2 to 3 words of your question? Just keep it simple. Asking long-winded questions is problematic at best. Your questions should be short and to the point. Why? Remove questions with the word why in them, as most responses are 1 to 3 words at best. Asking a why question invites a long response, and it does, and you don't want that. So focus on questions that can be answered in 1 to 3 words. Open-ended questions. You want to cater your questions to as many possible responders as possible. You'll have a better chance of catering to any rather than just one. And this is excellent if you've never been to the location, okay? Your tone. Researchers have determined that only 7% of your statements are actually interpreted by the choice of words spoken aloud. Successful interviewers understand it's not the word that's chosen, it's how you say them. Guys, we know this from regular communication every day. Your tone can be the difference in any conversation. Speaking with a loud voice may allow everyone on the same floor to hear you, but speaking softer will draw a listener in. Loud voices can be obnoxious, where soft ones can draw people in. People will want to talk to you. And then you want to ask about a verification of a possible experience. So let's say that you saw a manifestation. Let's say that you got touched. You want to ask, did you just touch me? Did you just try to show yourself? Okay? Simple questions to the point. Is this getting monotonous yet? We're getting there, okay? Be creative with your questions, okay? Spirits are all around us all the time. Be creative with your questions. The most important thing about conducting your EVP session is to make sure and give them time to respond. You want to allow at least 20 seconds for them to respond. So ask your question and be patient. I told you that's the key word for tonight. Be patient, let them ask. Friendly spirits are more likely to communicate when you emit a positive energy. Remember, we talked about this. Go into your investigations positive, with a positive mind. Check your negativity and BS at the door, because it's not going to get you anywhere, okay? Never yell or threaten a spirit. Even if they're friendly, they could become angry, okay? Nobody likes to be yelled at. Nobody likes to be disrespected, okay? So keep that in mind. If someone bumps into a piece of furniture or a car pulls up outside, tag the occurrence. Make sure you say something like, note, we heard a thump in the room. A lot of times you'll hear me, if you're on investigation with me, you'll hear me talk to my recorder. Note, I heard a car. Note, I saw light. Note, I heard this. Or note, Deegan sneezed. Or, note, Zach said something, or whatever. I'm constantly notating, because when I go back, I don't want a false positive, okay? So just be smart. You also want to notate when your teammates are whispering. And guys, never whisper on an investigation. Say what you got to say. Everybody's going to hear it, and if you whisper, they're going to hear it even more and think it's an EVP. Say what you have to say. If you're going to whisper, notate it. Zach was whispering. Zach said this. Whatever. Okay? We've talked about us using a minimum of 2 digital recorders. I would highly suggest you get 2 recorders, okay? It just makes sense. All right, let's talk about classification of EVPs. And if you guys paid attention not too long ago, Nicole actually did a whole week on EVPs. So there are four main categories of EVPs. Class A is when you get the clear voice and everyone who listens to it can make out what's being said. Everybody agrees on what's being said, okay? They don't have to be amplified. You don't have to do anything to it. It's a perfect EVP, okay? Class B would be understood, and most people will agree on what's being said. Not everybody will understand it, but most will agree. It's not perfect. Class C is the worst quality that you could ever capture, okay? So can't make it out. You have to amplify it. You have to listen to it and make it out to be something. Trash it. It's a Class C. And then there's a Class R. And Class R EVPs are pretty cool because that means if you play it backwards, it has a meaning and you can hear about it. You can hear it. So you could have a Class RA EVP, and that means that when you played it in reverse, you could very clearly make it out. You could have a Class B, you could have a Class C with the R with it too, okay? So those are just the four basic classifications. Now, that's it on EVPs for right now. We'll go into doing some reviewing of evidence later on EVPs, and we'll talk about some software programs to review it. Audacity and WavePad seem to be the two most popular used by investigators. We'll talk about that later, but you've got the basics of EVPs and how to ask the questions and how to review it, okay? So let's get to my favorite topic, which is taking pictures. If you guys have been on the NPS website or the NPS Facebook page, you have seen a lot of stuff coming up about photos. We've got a lot of great information on the website about it. Check it out before you post your pictures and be ready for us to ask questions. On the actual group page, you will see me and the photo team talking to you about your pictures. So let's talk about taking pictures. Now, we've told you before to make sure that you take pictures when you do your walkthrough. Some people like to do it before they leave too, so they can compare this room, this particular area, before and after, okay? Just make sure you take pictures. You're not going to remember what the client location looked like, okay? When you are documenting these pictures, you always want to remember the 1, 2, 3 rule. You're going to take 3 pictures back to back in succession. We ask for it when you post them up on the NPS page. Just get in the habit of doing it, okay? 3 pictures. You want to watch where your fingers are on the camera. Keep them away from the lens. Also, keep them away from the flash. Matter of fact, let me grab my camera. I'm going to show you something. Won't think about this when they're taking pictures. And, you know, you can use your cell phone to take pictures. It's probably going to be the same thing because nobody pays attention. But on my camera, for example, and I know most DSLRs are like this, I have a pop-up flash. So when I turn my camera on and I'm taking a picture, my flash pops up, okay? Most of the time when I'm holding my camera, I'm focusing. So I need to remember, keep my fingers down or put my fingers down here on my camera to keep my finger from coming in front of the flash. Because you know what this is going to cause? This is going to cause a shadow effect. And you're going to post your picture on NPS and we're going to tell you, you put your finger in front of the lens and you're going to tell me you didn't. But I'm going to guarantee you when you went to take your picture, you did, okay? Keep your finger out of this range. Keep it out of this range, okay? Same thing with your cell phones. Your cell phones have the camera on it. You can do the same thing here, guys. You can be holding your phone like this and you're still going to get a fingertip on it, okay? Be aware of your camera and how it works. If you've got a point and shoot, they probably have a flash on the top part of the box, and when you're holding it, you need to make sure your fingers are away from that flash. It will emit a shadow. It's a flash. It's a light. It's going to happen, okay? So make sure you know where your fingers are. You know, a lot of people will post that they got a shadow figure when they really didn't get a shadow figure. It's actually your finger, okay? Now, let's talk about the camera itself. My camera has a neck strap on it. I want to have that neck strap behind me. I don't want to have it hanging in front of me. The point and shoots have like a little, and I don't have a sample of one, but they have a little handheld cord on the side, and that sometimes can get in the way of your lens or your flash. So keep that back behind the camera. That could do a lot of flunky stuff for you, not just orbs, but maybe vortexes, that type of thing. We'll look at it here in a minute. So let's look at a couple of things with taking pictures. Some of the tips to keep in mind when you're taking pictures and shooting video. Consider your weather conditions. If you're in a humid area, you need to be thinking about that. You might get moisture orbs, okay? Hold your breath when you're snapping the picture. I can't tell you how many pictures we've seen lately that somebody thinks they've got ecto or a mist, and it's actually the photographer's breath when he or she exhaled when taking the picture. When you go to push the button down, hold your breath in. Always get in the habit of doing that. I don't care if you're indoors or outdoors. A lot of times people will take a picture. Mine has autofocus on it. Most of them do. Some of them don't. But you can still affect the movement of your camera when you're breathing and taking a picture. So just try to keep it as still as possible. And we talk about keeping the camera steady and still. I was actually told to get a tripod, which I have, and set my camera on a tripod and take pictures that way, because now it's steady, and when I go to push it, it's not going to move as much. The other thing to do is to set it on a timer and take pictures that way, because now when you press the button, you're not pressing it, the camera's doing it, so there's no movement, there's no pressure on the camera to move it. And guys, common sense would tell you not to take a picture of a mirror or a window. No reflective or shiny surfaces. Just don't do it. Your flash is going to go off. It's going to come back in the window or the mirror, and you're going to get a false positive. You're going to get glare. You're going to get lens flare. You're going to get all sorts of stuff going on. Don't do it. If you have to take a picture of that mirror or you have to take a picture of that window, do it at an angle. Do it when your flash isn't going to hit it and come back into the camera, okay? Again, we're starting to see some of those pictures too. Just don't do it. Why would you take a picture in front of a reflective surface? I don't get it. Know what your equipment's capable of. Know what it can and can't do. I know Jason and I were doing some stuff last weekend, and we both have the same model camera. We both have Nikons, and we were out taking pictures, and mine kind of quit for a little bit, and his kind of quit for a little bit, and we were like, what's going on? Well, if we both have the same issue going on, and we both have the same camera, we're kind of testing it out, maybe something's affecting it, okay? Both cameras are doing the same thing. Now, if mine had just been doing it and his hadn't, then I might just think my camera malfunctioned. So that's something to really think about. And yeah, we were in the same area when it happened. So be mindful of that. Know what your equipment's capable of. Know how your camera works. Know when it acts up, what it's going to act up like. Just know your camera. It's like knowing your car, okay? I know my camera, I can hold it down. I've got it set to do continuous pictures. And when it doesn't do that, something's wrong. When Jason has the same camera and it's happening with his too, yeah, we got something going on. Sheri and I have the D3100, and Jason, you have the 3200, I think. They're in the chat room. So know what your camera is capable of, okay? And never take a picture. It's just like the reflections. Never take a picture towards the light. You guys, what are you going to catch by taking a picture towards the light? I mean, seriously, what are you going to catch? You're going to catch lens flare coming back. You're going to catch something bright in your camera. You're not going to get a good picture, okay? No-nos are mirrors, windows, shiny surfaces, and lights, okay? That's when we see a lot of lens flare. That's when you'll see a lot of really pretty things going on, and we'll look at some stuff here in a little bit. Just don't do it, okay? Don't frustrate us and make us look at it. We get tired of seeing all the orbs and the flashes and you guys thinking it's paranormal when it was just a matter of learn your camera, okay? Let's talk a little bit and let's touch on this. This is coming from the NPS website in the photography tab. I wanted to go over it because we've had a lot of this showing up on the NPS page. So let's go over it real quick. You guys can read the rest of it on the NPS page. And then let's look at a couple of pictures tonight. So camera autofocus. What is camera autofocus? That's basically how your camera knows what the subject of your photograph is, okay? If I'm taking a picture, it's going to focus on what's immediately in front of me. Now, depending on your camera, again, know your equipment. If I'm standing there and Deegan runs behind me and somebody's taking a picture of me, what do you think is going to happen when Deegan's running behind me? We're going to look at that here in a little bit. My camera's going to try to focus on everything, and it's probably going to get me, and it's probably going to get a blur of Deegan in the background. And a lot of people like to think that this is a spirit or some type of manifestation. It's not, okay? It's your camera autofocus coming into play. You can read some more about that on the photography tab of NPS. The next thing you want to do, clean your camera sensor. Have you ever looked through your camera viewfinder and wondered, what are those spots that I'm seeing? They're not paranormal, and they're not orbs, guys. They're an indicator of a dirty camera lens, or dirty camera sensor, mirror, or even lens. Guys, clean your lenses, okay? Keep your lens cap on your camera. Clean your lenses. Keep a soft cloth for that. Keep your camera clean, and you won't have all of these false positives, okay? I can't tell you how many people post pictures, and you can tell it's a dirty lens, okay? Take care of your camera. Same thing goes for lens fungus. If you're not keeping your camera clean, if you're taking your camera outside in a humid situation, you're asking for trouble if you're not keeping it clean. You should store your camera in a dry, safe place. I always keep mine in its camera bag unless I'm using it, okay? Take care of your camera. Lens fungus doesn't just affect your lens, but it can affect the internal workings of your camera if you don't find it in time to clean it properly and get rid of it. If you've invested money in a DSLR, you're going to be pretty pissed off at yourself if you're not keeping it clean when you ruin it by something like lens fungus that can be prevented, okay? So keep them clean. You can read more about it, and there's actually some links on how to take your camera apart and clean that on the NPS site. So take care of your equipment. Now, when we're looking at actually reviewing pictures, when you guys post your pictures and we're asking you guys to adhere to the phase 1 graphic, we're asking you for the date of the picture, the zip code of the picture for a reason, because we're going to check the weather that day, okay? We're asking you what kind of camera was used. We're asking you if the flash was on. The other thing that we might ask you for, if we really have a question about your picture, is to send us the original. Why do we do that? Well, first off, we want to see a really good version of it. Sometimes on Facebook, it'll upload kind of a smaller version, not so clear. The second thing we're going to look at immediately as soon as we get your picture is the EXIF data. EXIF stands for Exchangeable Image File. This is where all of the information regarding your pictures is stored, okay? It will tell us the shutter speed at the time the picture was taken, the exposure compensation, the f-stop number, the metering system used, whether the flash was used or not, the ISO number, the date and time the picture was taken, the white balance, the auxiliary lenses that were used, and the resolution. All that probably sounds great to you guys, but when you're looking at pictures, it's what makes a difference, okay? So we will look at all of that, and we can tell you, yes, your flash was used. Yes, this is what happened, okay? It will also tell us if you have manipulated or done something to that image, okay? So, and sometimes if it's a cell phone, it will tell us the GPS location too. We really don't care about that because we're figuring you're going to be honest with us and tell us where you took your picture. You can read more about that, and there's actually some links to some websites where you can upload your picture and look at your EXIF data on your own. Okay, so kind of check that out too and play with that. Now, Eric, if you'll pull up, there's a couple of pictures I wanted to show you guys of. The first one has 3 pictures on it, and you'll actually see this picture on the NPS website. This picture is the perfect example of 3 different types of lens flare. These are not paranormal at all. This is where your camera autofocus didn't come into play and there was some movement. In between the shutter speed and the movement, it played with the light when it captured it. If you look at the next picture, you can actually see me last weekend. Jason and I were doing some experiments. I had a green flashlight and a white flashlight. And all I did was I waved them around. Okay? That's all I did was just stand there and wave them around. You can see the green flashlight actually lit up the grass underneath me. And you can see it looks like I'm holding a lightsaber. On the white one, if you look over on the screen to the left, do you see that little mist-looking thing? That's light reflection. That's not an orb. That's not a mist. That's not ecto. That is actually a camera anomaly from the lens flare and the shutter speed, okay? These are prime examples of why we go out and take pictures so that we can show you what it looks like, okay? It's kind of like getting back into high school and being in science and doing the science experiments. So you have something to compare to. That's what this is, okay? Now, let's talk about shutter speed and light streaks. Your camera shutter speed controls exposure. It's kind of like a curtain that opens and lets light in, that starts the exposure and then closes to end it. So when your camera's taking a picture, it's doing a lot of stuff in that little press of a button. the photo doesn't just capture a moment in time. It's not just capturing your grandma or your kids or outside or your investigation location. It actually represents an average of light over a time frame. The term shutter speed is what describes this, okay? There's an article on the NPS photography tab that you want to look at and read by Anna Hill that appeared on talkparanormal.com. It explains a lot about shutter speed. And if you are one of those techo people that loves to look at stuff for cameras, it actually explains to you ISO and f-stop for the shutter speed, so you can actually understand it a little bit more. Whenever your camera's capturing moving subjects, it's trying to balance that, but it's also taking it over duration. So it's going to capture everything that it can. Kind of think of a panoramic photo, how it kind of goes around and captures all of that. That's what your camera's kind of doing in a split second. Okay, so think about it that way. Motion. Let's look at motion. Let's go down and look at these pictures that show the slow shutter speed. This is a very, very cool picture, by the way. I found this actually, you guys can get a link to it from the photography tab on NPS. This is actually from Cambridge in Color. They do a lot of really good information out there, and there's tutorials. And there's tutorials from everything from A to Z on cameras and photography. I highly, highly, highly recommend that site if you really want to learn about your cameras. But a lot of things with motion is the speed, direction of motion, and the magnification. So you can see we're looking at two side-by-side pictures here. One shows a slow shutter speed, so it's capturing all of that light movement, and the other one shows a fast shutter speed of a light bulb being dropped. And you see how both of them capture different things. Now, if we move on to the next picture, you can see motion being caught in the pictures. Now, here's someone playing a piano, and I guarantee you somebody's going to post something similar to this on NPS, and they're going to tell me it was a spirit figure. It's not. It is your camera capturing that motion. These hands are playing that music so fast that when the camera snapped the picture, it caught all the movement, okay? Same thing with the Ferris wheel picture next to, okay? You guys think, okay? Now, there was the fast shutter speeds and slower shutter speeds chart. That's on that Cambridge in Color, and you can get to that link from the NPS website, so it'll give you a little more information. I know I'm kind of running through here, but we got a little bit more to go through before the show's over, and we got about 15 minutes. So let's talk about my favorite subject, orbs, or as I like to call them, dorbs. So we're going to look at this picture. You guys have seen me put this side by side on NPS. My young adult investigators and the young adult investigator from FEAR, from Selena's team. I think I saw Selena pop in, didn't I? This is a nice experiment that we had fun doing at a cemetery. So we had the kids run up and down the gravel road, which you don't really see in the picture. We had them run back and forth, sliding their feet, and then we told them to stop and pose for a picture. And so we took the first picture, and you can see all of these dorbs all around, okay? Those are not spirits at all. Then we waited a few minutes for the dust and the dirt to settle, and you can see in the second picture there's still one kind of floating around that caught the light, okay? When you ask me how I know if those are dust and dirt orbs in your pictures, this is how I know, okay? I did an experiment. I can match it up. Now, let's look at reflections. Remember we talked about shiny surfaces and lights and what not to do. Well, here's a picture that I took off the internet. I actually borrowed it from etherealthoughts.com, where they gave an example of reflections. So here we're taking a really pretty Christmas picture. We want to get a picture of the family next to the tree, and what happens? The lights on the Christmas tree get reflected on the flash from the camera, and now all of a sudden people are going to tell me that there's an orb on top of this lady's head. Seriously, guys, this this is one of the prime examples of a reflection, how your camera captures that with light. Your camera is capturing light onto film, and this is what happens, okay? That is not an orb on her head, all right? I hate to disappoint you guys. Now, let's go and look at vortex and vortices. I'm having such a hard time. This picture I borrowed from LA spirits, and this is a prime example of what some people would call a vortex. This is not a vortex. Do you guys really want to know what this is in front of this camera that was picked up and you guys are going to die? It's not dust. It's not a dirt piece. It's not anything like that. This is actually a strand of hair in front of the camera. Okay? Don't put this on NPS and tell me you got a vortex, because I'm going to tell you it's a hair strand. You want to know why? Because somebody took a picture and tested it out, and look what we have to compare it to, okay? Think about what's going on around your camera. Shadows. Now, I don't see David in the chat room, bless his heart. He's from the UK, and he's on our photography team. We actually were doing some challenges with the reps. I guess we started maybe last week, and put up some of our pictures from our debunking sessions. And so Jason and I had put up our pictures from the cemetery last weekend. And we actually had caught some light reflection on the camera, and so we asked him about that. And then we did the pictures I showed you a while ago. And then David puts this picture up. And he's like, okay, you guys, what do y'all think of this picture? And we bounce back and forth, Well, if you look, it's almost the shape of that table piece with a light hitting the shadow, okay? Or a shadow of something else in the room. That's actually what it looks like. But when you work with a lot of graphic software, I work with Photoshop a lot. You guys are seeing the slides right now I do in Photoshop. I work with it a lot. When you look at this, you can actually see the circular tool that was used to create the shadow. And David admitted that, yes, he did it on his phone. He went to a Samsung program and did the little shadow on there. If you guys will look at pictures close enough, you can tell when somebody has faked a picture. So when we ask you for information on pictures, we're asking for a reason, okay? This was a prime example of a debunkable photo where somebody had faked it, okay? But it was a great, great test picture. Now, the next one we want to look at is ecto and mist. And these are two real cool pictures that I borrowed from LA Spirits as well. The first one is actually smoke, cigarette smoke. And the second one is what we just got done talking about. This one was taken outside. Got to think about the weather. They went to go take a picture, and what happened? The photographer exhaled. That's what that is, okay? Ecto and mist. They look really cool, but they're nothing paranormal, okay? So be aware of all of that. All of that we just covered, we went through on photo discussion week 1. Actually 2, I'm sorry. And if you go on to the photography tab of the NPS website, you can read all the background on all of that, and you can actually click through on the links to go to the articles and the information on those. Last but not least, this actually really is my favorite thing to talk about and one of my favorite things to see. So when you guys find pictures of matrixing, put them on the NPS page and tag me, because I love looking at these. Let's talk about some pareidolia. I think I got it. Pareidolia is actually a form of I can never say this, apophenia. These are terms that are used in the psychological arena, okay? Apophenia, I'm going to slaughter these words tonight, is defined as the experience of seeing patterns or connections in random or meaningless data. Makes sense to me. Pareidolia is defined as a psychological phenomenon involving a vague and random stimulus, often an image or a sound, being perceived as significant. So guys, let's look at some of these pictures. The very first one that you see on the, I guess that would be your left, is the rose, or the flower, that has what looks like a skull face in it. This is one of my favorite pictures, okay, of matrixing. This pretty much shows you, nope, that's just a flower, there's nothing paranormal there. But what does your mind make out at first? The second one, I don't think any of us can pronounce this right. The chat room's going crazy. I'm not the only one slaughtering words tonight. The second one is popcorn, guys. That's popcorn, that's not little skulls. It's another one of my favorite ones. Let's flip to the last one. These are actually out in nature. They're not signs from God, and they're not paranormal, but these are trees. The first one looks like an actual skull, but it's just the way the branches have formed it. And the second one looks like a woman's face. And again, it looks just like tree branches. Eric, I'm getting a note that none of the pictures are showing.
Yeah, well, I had a little bit of an emergency here, but the pareidolia one's up now.
Okay, they're coming up. There they are. Okay, you guys are seeing them. So you guys can see how when you're looking at this, your mind immediately jumps to what it recognizes. Now, if you stare at those tree pictures long enough, you can actually see the physical branches in each tree and make out that it's really not what you think it is. So keep that in mind when you're looking at pictures. Just because it looks like something in your picture doesn't mean it is, okay? And it doesn't mean that it's paranormal either, okay? So let's just keep that in mind. You may be looking at, I don't know, bushes or something on your investigation, be like, oh my God, I saw something. No, honey, you didn't. You just saw some leaves, okay? Again, if you guys want to share pictures with us on the NPS page, please put it up there, put an introduction on it, tell us what you think it is. I'm going to ask you how you debunked it already, because I want to see if you've actually read the information we've put out on the NPS website and applied it. We're going to make investigators out of everybody. Now, we got 7 minutes left. You guys, I talked fast. We went fast. We covered a lot. I was afraid we wouldn't get to it all, so that's awesome that we did. We're going to thank some sponsors. And then the big news of the night is going to be kind of, I don't know, the cat out of the bag type of thing tonight, so I hope you guys are ready. So if you're ready, Eric, let's go ahead and give a big shout out to Paranology. So you guys go out and check out Jeremy and some of his equipment. We're actually going to be bringing it out this weekend. And I need to get caught up on the DNS page, but you'll see some pictures of some of his equipment that we used this past weekend. We want to do a huge, huge shout out to Scott Frederick. You are seeing his pictures in the background of the Endeavor graphics, okay? This is Scott's work. He does some awesome, awesome work. We want to do another huge shout out to Blessed Bee. If you guys need anything, really, they carry everything online, so make sure you check that out. And then last but not least, our newest sponsor is Front Range Ghost Shop. They can handle all of your ghost hunting needs. Head over there and tell Arthur that we sent you and check out what they got. Now, next week on the show, we are going to talk more about pictures in general, not just kind of false positive type thing. We're going to talk about pictures in general. We're going to run through that. We're going to start talking about the evidence review process. And I'm hoping the week after that we can wrap up with evidence review, the follow-up with your client, and then we'll be done. And we'll have walked through everything on the investigation. And we'll be ready to actually do investigative work. So I'll see you guys next week. Actually, I'll see you probably in like 5 minutes on the next show. So stay tuned for NPS Focus and Project Endeavor. See you guys in a little while.